This is The Clash, where the real world clashes with a true Christian worldview. Join former professional wrestler Chris Whaley, known as the Masked Saint, who is an author, pastor, and teacher that brings his wrestling skills into the squared circle and tackles real-life issues. Along with Jeff Dixon, best-selling author, internationally known teacher, leader, and pastor who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the world we live in. Together they form a tag team of wisdom in The Clash.
Hi, welcome to The Clash, where we take real life and allow it to clash into our Christian faith. The result is hopefully something that will encourage you, motivate you, strengthen you, entertain you. And speaking of entertaining, I am here today with the star of this particular show, the one, the only, the Saint, Chris Whaley. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Man, Jeff, I am so excited about these next two shows of The Clash.
And it seems like I say that a lot.
Yeah.
But every time we get to do what we're getting ready to do, I just get like a little kid.
Yeah.
Because I just get so excited about what's coming and knowing what's coming. And it just keeps getting better and better.
And I look at it as topping the best we've had.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. Well, let me ask you, Jeff, who do you think are some of the most memorable stars of the WWE?
Man, I tell you, well, again, as you know, as our audience knows, I love professional wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, that's part of what we do in the show. But and I've had the opportunity to go to a couple WrestleManias. I mean, it's just, been fun. I love The Rock. Dwayne Johnson has just been fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Love The Undertaker. Got to see a couple matches in that streak. Amazing. Triple H.
Oh, yeah.
Shawn Michaels. And then there have been some characters that are even bigger than that, though. Larger than life.
Yeah.
Bad guys that you really just...
You got to mention Hulk Hogan, too.
Well, Hulk Hogan, yes. Now, I didn't get to see Hulk in a WrestleMania, though.
Yeah.
I've never seen him in person. But, yeah, he's big. How about you? Who?
Well, I think Hulk really... made the WWE. I mean,
I agree.
Well,
so really, Sylvester Stallone made the WWE.
Yeah, he did.
Because he put Thunder Lips in the
He put Thunder
movie,
Lips
right?
in Rocky 3.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a, I think it was kind of a springboard for the WWF at that time. And of course, Hulk Hogan became the ultimate baby face on there, and you gotta say your prayers and eat your vitamin, brother, and all that kind of stuff, And man, what a long run. But I'm sure there are others, but I think the guy that we interviewed and our audience is going to get to see, I think after this interview, they're going to put him up there pretty high too.
I think they should. Now, again, I will, and in complete disclosure too, I tell you what, I had the opportunity on more than one occasion to be sitting in the arena when his entrance music hit.
Yeah. And
the fire came. I mean, and it was overpowering and intimidating. And I remember watching with my daughters. I mean, you can see them kind of shrinking her seats a little bit. But I mean, this guy, well, he's a Hall of Famer. He is as big as any superstar that's come down the line.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I'm excited about getting ready, what everybody's getting ready to see, because we've talked to him, so we know what's coming.
Can I tell them who it is?
I don't know. We could go to a commercial first, or we could take a break, or we could say come back next week, or
no.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and tell them who's coming?
We are talking to Kane, Glenn Jacobs, who is I think he was awesome. One of the most awesome heels and baby faces.
And baby faces, back and forth.
In the WWE.
Yeah, larger than life character.
Yeah, and now he is the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee.
Yeah.
And it was, we got to interview a lot of wrestlers, a lot of big name wrestlers, But this is pretty special today, wouldn't you say?
I agree. And, and one of the things that we try to do, again, and if you've watched the show before, that we are very, we're faith-based in what we're doing. We love to have conversations about faith. We love how to take that conversation and put it in real life.
Yeah.
Mayor Jacobs, at that point, really is the ultimate guest, too.
Oh, yeah.
Because he is a guy who has been at the top of his game. He's still at the top of his game. Mm-hmm. He's got, well, you'll hear he's a great man of faith. I mean, this really is, for us, just an amazing time that we now get to share with you. And so...
let's get to it.
Yeah, without further ado, this is a conversation that Chris and I had with Glenn Jacobs. You might know him as Kane. You might know him as Mr. Mayor. But by the time you're done, you're going to know him as a follower of Jesus. And let's get started. Hey, Chris, I was just doing my laundry, and look what I found.
Oh, my goodness, look at that. The Clash.
The Clash T-shirt.
I love that.
You know what makes it so special?
Why?
Well, because this is the Clash TV show. This is our logo. This came out of my laundry bucket. That means that these T-shirts are available for everybody to buy. And that means that when you need to do some shopping, that special gift, think about it.
Yep.
You've been invited to a wedding. You need to buy a wedding present for the bride and groom.
Wow.
Matching Clash T-shirts.
How awesome
Every
would that
home
be?
needs that. When they have a baby, what do you want to get the baby?
A onesie.
A onesie, a Clash onesie. You can get that as well.
Right.
If you're looking for that extra special gift for a loved one,
Right.
you can go to the Clash store and get a Clash journal. You can get Clash magnets. You can get Clash widgets and gadgets and keychains. All of that is available. All you have to do is visit the Clash store.
We live in a great day, Jeff.
We do. And perhaps the greatest store out there is the Clash store. So follow the QR code at the bottom of the screen. You can go to the Clash store and get stuff your very own. It'll make us happy. It'll make the show even better. And you can put on your Clash gear while you watch every single episode of the Clash.
Absolutely.
All right. We are thrilled to death to be here today with Glenn Jacobs. We can call him His Honor. Some folks are going to know him by his wrestling name, Kane.
Yeah.
There's been some other wrestling monikers you've used over time, but you are also the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. So welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Hey, he's one of the greatest of all time WWE wrestlers. Hall of Famer, former WWE champion, Intercontinental champ, tag team champ, plus all these other accolades. And hey, Glenn, it is said that you had the best debut in the WWE. Man, that's quite a compliment. How did you feel about that night?
Yeah, I believe that it was, but it wasn't me. It was the fact that the table was just set perfectly for that debut. For months, they'd been talking about this character, Kane, that no one had seen. At first, Paul Bearer was the first one who started talking about it. So there's all this buildup. And then, of course, what WWE did, this is just great storytelling. They planted a seed, and then they get away from that, and they have this match between Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. It was the first time that those two just huge names had ever had a match in this structure. It's huge steel cage structure that no one could get in or out of, and it was just perfect. Everything was just set up perfectly for me. And then you have the iconic line of all of a sudden the lights go out and there's this point in the match, the Undertaker's got it won, and all this stuff starts happening. The lights go out and you could hear a pin drop in the arena because no one's quite sure what was going to happen. And then I come out and you have Vince McMahon saying, "That's got to be Kane. That's got to be Kane." And it was so wild because I think it did take the live audience in the arena. Obviously, they didn't hear what he was saying on pay-per-view, right?
Yeah.
But it was like 15 seconds of the entire audience going, "What's going on?" And then it just clicked.
Yeah.
And they realized, oh, that's the dude that they've been talking about now.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just perfect. And that night, I was glad to get through it. I was pretty nervous because Shawn and Undertaker had a tremendous match. So my real objective was just not to mess the match up and be known for that. But it did. It was tremendous, and obviously just like put a rocket ship under me and went straight to the moon.
Yeah.
I was talking to my daughter a little while ago, and I told her we were getting ready to do this today, and she's like, "Dad, how many times did we go see him in person? I booed him so many times."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, we're not going to boo him today."
Well, that's all right. Here's the thing in wrestling: all you want to do is get a reaction. Yeah. It doesn't matter if they're booing you or cheering you, as long as they say something, as long as they care. Either way, that's the most important part of it.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what. Well, you, as I remember, of course, of course, Chris is a former professional wrestler here. I'm just a geek. So for me, these interviews in time like this is just amazing because I can remember, the heel turns. I can remember, you becoming a baby face all of a sudden, everybody's favorite, and then next thing you know, oh, he's turned heel again. Here we go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a roller coaster ride, though. But as a character, Kane was just and continues to just be iconic in WWE.
Sure, I was just incredibly blessed, and you're right. My character lended itself to really being anything. Yeah, and it just so much of it really depended on who my opponent was more than anything else. If my opponent was one of the good guys, I was a bad guy. If my opponent was one of the bad guys, I was one of the good guys.
Sure.
So despite the fact that there were constraints around the character, because it was a character. When people think of WWE wrestlers, generally you think of someone whose personality, that's them, but their personality's just been turned up, or something about them has just been really turned up and exaggerated. With Undertaker and Kane, we were characters. Yeah. Okay, obviously we're not supernatural beings like we were on TV. Yeah. So when I say there's constraint, there was that. There was set things around the Kane character and the Undertaker character, you couldn't deviate from.
Sure.
Because if you did that, you'd literally destroy the character and no one believe in it anymore. However, because of that as well, and I think more specifically for Kane, I had a lot of flexibility in some of the things and people that I would work with because I was always that character. Yeah. And it just depended on the outside circumstances of how the audience viewed me and that viewed Kane.
Right. Well, my last 3 years in professional wrestling was in Fort Worth, Texas. I was actually going to seminary in Fort Worth at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. So I go to seminary at daytime and I wrestled at night. And I'd been in wrestling for 10 years at that time. And I had the opportunity to work against somebody that you worked against, Mark Calaway, the Undertaker. And I'll tell you, in 10 years, of course, he was not even wrestling as Mean Mark or any. He was wrestling under the name of Powerhouse, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
He had no tattoos. He had a crew cut.
Right.
He looked like Howdy Doody, 6 foot 5 inch, 315-pound Howdy Doody. But, out of I've worked with some of the biggest names in the business, but out of everybody I've worked with, he was one of the smoothest guys to work with, one of the nicest guys. Now, when you are there with him, he's a megastar. I mean, he's at the top of the food chain, and you're working with him. So how was your time with The Undertaker?
He was integral to my career all the way around. Our first match was actually before WWE. It was in a building which is not far from where I'm sitting right now, the Knoxville Civic Coliseum. I was working for Smoky Mountain Wrestling. They had a talent agreement with WWE. And I already signed a contract with WWE at that point. But anyway, so Undertaker and Paul Bearer had come down and to wrestle the Unabomb was my name back then, right? And Mark was just impressed because I could keep up with him in the ring athletically.
Yeah.
And there were not a lot of big guys that could do that.
Mm-hmm.
And he is, as you say, he's very smooth. He's very athletic.
Yeah.
And for someone that's that big and the way he could move and do all this stuff, leapfrogs and drop kicks, and he could walk across the top rope like it was a tightrope. It's crazy how athletic he was. Obviously there just aren't many people that can be able to keep up with that, but I could.
Yeah.
So he just liked me immediately because he saw someone that he could work with, that he could have matches with. So he was always a big a big advocate of mine. When I got to WWE, I had the character Dr. Isaac Yankem. I was not happy. It showed. I hated that whole thing. And he was the guy that came to me and said, "Look, man, you can't mope around. You have to try to make this work.
Right.
Your attitude really determines a lot of things." It's like, yeah, I have to change my attitude, and yeah, I don't like this, but nevertheless, if I can prove that I can keep going and I can kind of push through this adversity, they'll give me another chance, which they did, and then they did again. And then when Kane came along, I mean, obviously, here's the deal. And it wasn't Kane that was successful. It was the fact that Kane was the Undertaker's brother. And immediately you're thrown into the mix with the Undertaker.
Right.
You're his equal physically. That's just how the audience perceived it.
Yeah.
Right. And then just throughout, especially those early years, and he was just a big mentor for me, just helped me with so many things. I remember, I was having some trouble that people didn't want to work with me because, Kane was supposed to destroy everybody, right?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want Kane destroying me. I'm like, well, you need to go talk to Mark about that, okay? Because this is what's going to happen. If you don't, guess what? But he was always like that. Throughout my entire career, he had my back. I remember one time I was just going, through some just stuff professionally, and things weren't going my way. And I went to talk to Vince about it. And Vince told me that, Mark had already been in to talk to him. And he said he worries a lot more about you than he does himself.
Wow.
And that's the kind of person that he is.
Wow.
But yeah, if it hadn't been for the Undertaker, there never would have been a Kane. And if it hadn't been for Mark Calaway, Glenn Jacobs would have never had the success that he had. That's for sure.
That's incredible.
Well, now I'm almost hesitant to do this because I was going to ask you about that Dr. Isaac Yankem character. But I do want to know how did, okay, so, and again, you weren't happy with that. I'm like, okay, I get that. How did that part then, how did you go from that, where'd that start, to how did you transition then away from that with the new Kane character? How did that happen?
Sure. So, I was here working at Smoky Mountain Wrestling. I'd already signed a developmental contract with WWE. They called me up to meet with Vince and J.J. Dillon, who at that time was over talent relations. And Vince he'd always had this idea for a wrestling dentist. And I think it actually came from Bobby Heenan, is what I was told. Now, you have to remember, though, the time frame that we're in. This was when you had a lot of just over-the-top sort of cartoonish stuff going on. The product was geared really towards kids, right? So you had like, oh gosh, I forget. Yeah, T.J. Hopper, who is a plumber. He had just all these different, like, really, again, just really caricatures almost and cartoonish stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's just where the company was. So it wasn't like they thought, oh, we're going to saddle this guy with this, with this horrible gimmick. It was just they thought it was going to be successful because that's where the company had gone. Then within about a year, things just completely switched, and he had Stone Cold Steve Austin come onto the scene, and everything, become much more reality based.
Right.
So it was just difficult for me because just like in every other performance, in wrestling, one of the beauties of wrestling, and Chris, you know this, is you get to create, right? You get to create that character.
Right.
There was nothing about the dentist character that I could relate to. So it was very difficult for me to do. I'm thinking to myself, I'm 6'8" and 315 pounds, and I'm a demented dentist, and this is just ridiculous, right? So it was just very difficult for me to be able to pull that off. I always joke I couldn't sink my teeth into it. From there, though, because I did show that once I had that talk with Mark, and I realized that look, I really need to be appreciative of where I am instead of pouting about it. And eventually this will get better. So from there's another character. This one was, I thought it was a step in the right direction. A lot of people like the Isaac Yankem character better, but this was Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, who had been top stars in WWE, had gone to WCW. So their characters were Diesel and Razor Ramon.
Right.
So there was this idea that Jim Ross, who was a beloved announcer. He was very angry at Vince, and he was spiteful, and he was the person that created the stars. And he said anybody can be these stars. So he introduces the fake Diesel and the fake Razor. I was the fake Diesel.
Okay.
And again, it just storyline wise just didn't work because JR was. He could never be a heel. He was just people liked it too much. So he's got this heel team that the manager is something that people like. So many people like that wasn't going to work. So that was short run. But the thing that happened from there was I really proved that hey, this guy's good. He can go. We just need to find the right spot for him, and that's kind of where the Kane character came along.
Wow.
There's a bit of a backstory there. Undertaker was in a rivalry with Big Van Vader. We were in Kuwait, and Vader got arrested. It's a long story, but he got arrested. They're on a talk show, he and Mark, and the talk show host said, well, isn't wrestling fake? Leon took exception to that, kind of grabbed the guy on national TV and got arrested for assault.
I saw that.
In Kuwait, yes. So we're like, Leon is in jail in Kuwait. We have no idea when he's going to come home, right? But so the office in WWE is like, we need an opponent for Mark, for Undertaker. They're like, oh well, Glenn would be great. And the initial thought was you create this quick backstory of Kane, who is the Undertaker's long lost brother, burning a fire, all this stuff, stick him in a mask. They have one match, then you get back to business as usual. Well, the thing was that once they started talking about this backstory more, Vince fell in love with the idea. And he's like, why are we wasting this on one match? This is a full-blown story.
Yeah.
So that's really where the Kane character came from.
Yeah.
And from there, like I said, Mark is always a huge advocate of mine. And, I guess almost 30 years later,
sure,
here we are.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
By the way, I've got a friend who is a professional wrestler, but he's also a dentist. His name is Jimmy McDowell, and Vince actually flew him up to talk to him, and and he wanted to use him, but Jimmy had a practice, and he couldn't do it full time, and Vince wanted him full time. But anyway, I love Jimmy because he said his motto is he knocks teeth out at night and he puts them back in the morning.
There you go.
Yeah. All right. We haven't talked in a while. What have you been doing?
Well, I appreciate you asking me, Chris, because, incidentally, I have a new book coming out. That's right. About the time you're watching this, January. Saving the Magic Kingdom, a brand new Dixon on Disney novel. Coming out, brand new publisher, Magic Press Publishing, over-the-top adventure happening at Walt Disney World. So yeah, I've been writing a book and it's coming out, and I'm excited about it. I hope our folks will take a moment and go out to their favorite bookseller or check it out on Amazon.
As a big fan of Dixon, I've read your other novels and they are super. So don't forget to get this one.
That's right. Now I'll pay you as soon as we're done with this advertisement. But it's coming out. It's called Saving the Magic Kingdom, an adventure that takes place inside of Walt Disney World, and it comes out in January of this year. Pre-orders happening now.
I love hearing from our listeners. I have a website called themasksaint.com, and I get people telling me things about the old wrestling days. I love to hear from them. I'm on Facebook, I'm on X, I'm on Instagram. And I just never get tired of listening to people. And if you have not read The Masked Saint, I have that available on my website. I have the Christmas book, Harold's Heavenly Christmas. I have the last book that I wrote with a wrestling buddy called Mr. President. Pictures whenever I was still in good shape. I have those available along with t-shirts, anything, but most of all, just love to hear from you.
We're listening to a conversation that we got to have with Mayor Glenn Jacobs from Knox County, Tennessee, also known as Kane, among some of the other names that he wrestled under. And amazing guy. Hopefully you have enjoyed this wrestling conversation with him. Now, it's we're going to talk more. I mean, we're not done with the whole conversation yet. We're going to come back in another episode and talk a little bit more. But yeah, we need to stop for just a minute because we've talked. I mean, we've been talking with a WWE Hall of Famer, known across the globe, as big as any name that we're ever going to meet, ever going to talk to. I mean, and what an amazing guy and a good guy.
Yeah.
And some life lessons even in that conversation we had that kind of jumped out. What stood out with you?
You know, the fact that, you know, here's a guy, and of course, when you're in wrestling, everybody wants to be a star, of course. And he had aspirations of being bigger than, you know, the dentist Yankum guy. And so, he said himself he was pouting. And that Mark, talked with him. And then it changed his whole attitude. It's like, hey, I'm gonna plant where I'm gonna grow where I'm planted. And I think that's a great lesson for our viewers. Sure. That maybe you're not getting where you want to be, you're not doing what you want to do, you're in a situation where maybe you don't have the right attitude. And I don't know, I just thought that was awesome. What do you think?
Well, I was struck by the fact when he was telling us that I mean, here's a guy who, really he does. He wants to be at the top of the industry. He's got all the skill sets. But it struck me that in that moment, he's teachable. And I think one of the things that happens for us as followers of Jesus is that we become lifelong learners.
Right.
As smart as you are today, as smart as I am today, I mean, my gosh, if you'd noticed 10, 20 years ago, we're dumber in post, right? I mean, so the fact, hopefully, if we're anything, I mean, whether you like us or not, hopefully people would always say, Christians, they're teachable, And when I heard him share that story, it just dawned on me, this guy was willing to be taught. That says volumes about him.
Oh, yeah.
And how he kind of changed and kind of flipped a switch and changed, the way he was looking at that moment.
Right.
And again, I was also struck by how he really did share that, the Undertaker, as we know him, really was a mentor and really kind of threw back on the fact that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have the career I had.
Right.
That's powerful.
Wow. Yeah, that really is. And, I read a lot of stuff preparing for this, interview with him. And the thing that impressed me so much is reading about how he was in the locker room. That he was kind of like a stabilizing force in the locker room. That if you had something, you talk to Glenn about it. Okay. And I think it was because of his journey in there and the things that he had learned. He's also mentoring other guys that may not be happy where they were. So that's pretty awesome.
Well, I mean, and again, as we heard his wrestling story too, I mean, just like every other wrestler that we've met, there's definitely a journey there. Portraying a character and getting an audience reaction, certainly is a part of it. But he's a man who was able to tap into a character.
Right.
That by the time he was done with it, that character became, unforgettable.
Yeah.
It's the stuff of collectible figures. It's the kind of thing where, you can go and YouTube his name, that character, Kane.
Right.
And you can watch for hours. There's been multiple DVD releases.
Yeah.
If you go to the streaming networks and watch the WWE stuff, I mean, he is everywhere on there. And then what an amazing guy.
Yeah.
And willing to kind of share those stories and kind of peel back the mask just a little bit for us. And so that's pretty cool.
And we've got more. We're gonna have another episode with Glenn Jacobs, and in that next episode, we're going to be talking about his journey of faith and life today and politics. And you don't want to miss it. You want to come back next week and see part 2 of our interview with Glenn Jacobs. And I hope you learned some things today that'll help you. And remember this, don't tap out.